calls David Nelson.
Sir, do you solemnly swear that testimony you should give this court and you should now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you, sir. Time to call the officer.
Watch step, have a seat right here.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please identify yourself for the record and please spell your last name?
David Nelson, N-E-L-S-O-N.
And Mr. Nelson, how old are you, sir?
41.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a tattoo artist
And how long have you been a tattoo artist?
for about 10 years.
Do you currently own your own studio?
Yes.
And how long have you owned your own studio for?
About 1 year now.
Can you tell us what you were doing prior to opening up your own tattoo studio?
I was working for a different tattoo shop.
Okay. And that was from when to when?
About 2011 to 2013.
Okay. That other shop, what was it called?
It was called Hermosa Inc.
For the record, Hermosa
That's right.
INK. And you said that was between 2011 and 2013?
That's right.
While you were working at Hermosa Inc., were you employed there continuously between in that time frame, or was it on and off?
It was on and off.
Where's Hermosa Inc. Located?
It's in Hermosa Beach, California.
Mr. Nelson, I want to direct you to the time frame while you were working at Hermosa Inc. Do you remember doing some tattoos for an individual who you later learned was Aaron Hernandez?
Yes.
And at the time Mr. Hernandez had you do some tattoos for him, do you remember about how many occasions he came into the shop on?
Twice, I believe.
And on one of those occasions, or strike that, on the occasions that he came in, was he by himself or with anybody else?
He was with his girlfriend.
And his girlfriend, did she come with him on both of the occasions or just one of the occasions?
I believe just one.
In addition to his girlfriend, was there anybody else that came in?
No.
Okay. Do you remember whether or not his girlfriend had a child with her when she came in?
Yes.
And was it a toddler, an infant?
I believe it was an infant.
On the date that Mr. Hernandez and his wife came in, did each one of them get a tattoo, or did just Mr. Hernandez get a tattoo?
They each got one.
Can you tell us what you remember about when they came in, when they got those tattoos?
They came in and got the tattoos. That's pretty much all I remember.
Did they come specifically to you to get the tattoo, or did they come into the shop and at some point end up settling with you?
Yeah, they just came in, settled with me.
Okay. Do you remember the tattoos each of them got on the day that they came in together?
Yes.
Okay, and what were the tattoos that each one of them got?
It was, she got half of a quote, and he got the other half.
Did you do the tattoo work for both of them, that is, for his girlfriend and for him?
Yes.
Do you remember the substance of the quote that you gave to Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, it said something like, "We'll always have each other."
Okay. And what part of the body was that tattoo placed on?
On the chest.
Mr. Nelson, do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you recognize that to be?
The tattoo I did on his chest.
And is that a fair and accurate representation? That is, does it fairly and accurately show the work that you did on Mr. Hernandez's chest when he came in with his girlfriend?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd ask that it be marked as an exhibit for the hearing.
No, Mark. Exhibit 1 for this hearing.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 1 for the purposes of this hearing. And just to clarify, is it fair to say that the tattoo that you did in exhibit number 1 is in red?
Yes.
Okay, and the words are, can you just read the words that you tattooed on Mr. Hernandez?
Remind me that we'll always have each other.
Now you mentioned, Mr. Nelson, that there was another occasion when Mr. Hernandez came in and got a tattoo or tattoos from you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And on that occasion, did you give tattoos to anyone other than Mr. Hernandez?
No.
Okay. Do you remember whether Mr. Hernandez came in alone or whether he was with his girlfriend?
Alone, I believe.
Mr. Nelson, on this occasion when Mr. Hernandez came in alone and asked you to do some tattoos, what tattoos do you recall providing for Mr. Hernandez that day?
Two front views of a semi-automatic handgun, one spent shell casing, and a cylinder from a revolver with 5 out of the 6 bullets remaining.
Okay. Actually in the cylinder?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall doing any other tattoos for him at that sitting?
Yeah, I forgot the God Forgives.
Okay. Do you recall a tattoo that you provided with the words blood, sweat, and tears?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Was that a tattoo that you did on that sitting as well?
I believe so.
All right. Showing you that first picture that's on top there, does that picture show, at least in part for some of them, all of the tattoos that you described just now, except for the blood, sweat, and tears? That is the 2 muzzles of the semi-automatic, the shell casing, the words God forgives, and then the cylinder loaded with bullets with except for one chamber.
That's right.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't think the witness testified as to 2 semi-automatics that you just stated.
I can't hear you, sir.
I don't believe the witness testified that there were tattoos of 2 semi-automatics. You did 1 semi-automatic, I believe, in your testimony.
I thought he said 2, but Mr. Nelson, as far as you mentioned a front view of a semi-automatic.
Yeah.
How many different? How many of those did you do for him that day?
I believe 2.
Okay. And does that picture show 2?
Yes.
Does it show the shell casing?
Yes.
Does it show the words God forgives?
Yes.
And does it show the cylinder with the bullets in it? That is full of bullets except for 1.
Correct.
Empty chamber.
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate picture of the work that you did at that sitting for Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
And referring you now to the second photograph, do you recognize what's shown in the second photograph?
Yes.
What's shown in that photograph?
His right hand with the words blood, sweat, and tears on it.
Okay. And that photograph that I'm showing you, or that you're looking at there, is that a fair and accurate representation of the work that you did for Mr. Hernandez at that sitting?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd ask that those two photographs be marked as 2 and 3 for purposes of the hearing.
They may.
Showing you exhibit number 3 first, Mr. Nelson, is it fair to say that the words blood, sweat, and tears, the words blood and tears are in red, and the word sweat is in a darker color, we'll call it black?
Yes.
Showing you exhibit number 2. You mentioned that one of the tattoos was the muzzle, front view of a muzzle of a semi-automatic. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you see the arrow that I've drawn on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. And is that one of the 2 muzzles that you tattooed for Mr. Hernandez at that sitting?
Yes.
Okay. For the record, Your Honor, that is, as the picture is concerned, on the right side of Mr. Hernandez's right arm, by the letter B of Big Brother. You said there was a second semi-automatic front view, is that correct?
Yes.
And have I drawn an arrow to the second front view of the muzzle of the semi-automatic?
Yes.
And for the record, that arrow is pointing to the inside elbow area of Mr. Hernandez's right arm, closer to his body. And you mentioned that you also tattooed a shell casing for Mr. Hernandez at that sitting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And have I drawn an arrow pointing to where the shell casing is located on his arm?
Yes.
For the record, that shell casing is directly below the front muzzle view of the semi-automatic that we just went over, also on the inside of Mr. Hernandez's right elbow. And lastly, well, not lastly, but you also mentioned that he asked for the cylinder of a revolver loaded except for with one chamber empty. Is that correct?
Yes.
And have I drawn an arrow to the work that you did at that sitting with respect to the cylinder?
Yes.
And does that cylinder indicate 5 bullets loaded with one chamber empty?
It does.
For the record, that cylinder is located to the left of the letter B in Big Brother, on the other side where the first front muzzle view is located. And lastly, am I pointing to the words God forgives on the inside of Mr. Hernandez's forearm?
Yes.
Now, those 2 words, God forgives, were they written forwards or backwards?
Backwards.
For the record, that appears roughly over the I, the G, and the second B in the word Big Brother in that exhibit number 2. Showing you that picture, Mr. Nelson, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And is that fair to say that that's just a closer up version of the cylinder that we were looking at in exhibit number 2 just now?
Yep.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the cylinder as you tattooed it at that sitting with Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd offer that as exhibit number 4.
No objection.
Received.
Now, Mr. Nelson, when Mr. Hernandez asked you to tattoo this item on his arm, how did that, can you tell us in as great a detail as you can remember how that was communicated to you?
Pretty much said he wanted a cylinder of a revolver. So we pulled some images off of the internet, printed it out, and created a stencil out of that and put it on him. You know what? Actually, I might have drawn it freehand. I don't remember that detail.
Okay. Well, you first mentioned that he asked you for the cylinder of a revolver.
That's right.
And then you went on the computer.
Objection, Your Honor, is leading questions.
All right, don't lead, put a question.
Okay. I just want to pick up after you said that he told you he wanted a cylinder. What was the next thing you did?
Don't remember if I printed it off of the computer or if I just drew it by hand.
All right. Let's talk about the computer for a second. What did you do on the computer?
The front view of the handguns.
All right. Well, we're talking about the cylinder right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So how did he communicate to you that that's what he wanted? He told you verbally?
Yes.
And then what?
Objection, Your Honor, I don't know what that is, what he wanted is.
What were the words, to the best of your memory, that he used to communicate to you that what is shown right now on the screen is what he wanted?
I believe he said he wanted the part of the revolver where the bullets go.
And how did you come to draw it the way you did it?
We did look up on images, and we chose one that would be the best aesthetically for him, but I had to modify it so it was tilted so you could see the side of it.
Okay. And you said modify it so that you could see the side of it. Was that at Mr. Hernandez's request?
I believe I suggested that so it would just look better.
So that you could see some of the side?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's right.
The image that you selected off the computer, whose decision was that?
I believe it was Aaron's decision.
You need to keep your voice up just a little bit, okay? Whose decision was that?
Aaron's decision.
And you mentioned a stencil before. What's a stencil?
It's a linear drawing of the piece that I'm going to do, and with the skin moist, it transfers on there. Thank you. It's a transfer.
And what's the purpose of a stencil?
To put the image on the skin in order to follow it with the machine to put the lines in.
Okay, so you can trace it.
That's right.
Okay. And you said that you don't remember whether you used a stencil for this particular tattoo, correct?
That's right.
All right. If you didn't use a stencil, then you would have free-handed the tattoo?
That's right.
All right. Do you notice the number of bullets that are inside the cylinder?
5.
Who determined the number of bullets inside the cylinder that were to be tattooed?
The client, all right.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Including the idea, the fact that one of those chambers should be empty?
That's right.
These kinds of decisions, that is, what part of the gun, how much of it should be loaded, are those decisions that you typically make on behalf of your customers, or do you have your customers make those decisions?
The customers make all decisions.
And would you ever substitute your own decision in a situation like that to say, I want to put 4 in there or 3 in there?
Not without permission.
And in this particular instance, was there ever a discussion about how many bullets you wanted to put in that cylinder?
No.
When you completed the cylinder, that is the way it appears right now in exhibit number 4, do you recall whether Mr. Hernandez expressed any dissatisfaction with what you did?
No,
No, meaning he did not express any dissatisfaction?
he did not.
Showing you that picture, Mr. Nelson, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And is that a close-up of one of the 2 muzzles of the semi-automatic that you tattooed for Mr. Hernandez at that sitting?
Yes.
And in particular, is this the one that is on his right wrist, basically across from the cylinder that we're looking at right now?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I'll offer that as the next exhibit.
Exhibit 5.
Mr. Nelson, do you see the photograph of the muzzle that's on the other side of the letter B?
Yes.
And that's something that Mr. Hernandez requested of you at that same sitting?
Yes.
How did Mr. Hernandez, in as great a detail as you can remember, communicate to you that that's what he wanted tattooed?
Believe the front view of a handgun.
All right. And did he just say any old handgun?
I don't remember.
How did you settle on that image?
Same way on the internet, looking up images.
All right.
Sure.
And you did that together at a computer in your store?
Yes.
All right, or in your studio. And whose decision was it to choose that particular image?
The client's, Aaron Hernandez.
And did he choose also the location?
Yes.
Meaning the location on his body?
Yes.
After you tattooed the image of that muzzle, did Mr. Hernandez express to you any dissatisfaction with the work that you did with respect to that tattoo?
He did not.
showing you those next two pictures, Mr. Nelson, do you recognize what's shown in the first picture, the one that's on top?
Yes.
And what's shown in that picture, generally?
Right arm sleeve, tattoo sleeve.
Okay, so the bare arm with all the all the tattoos visible on the right arm?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Yes.
do you recognize your work in that picture, specifically what we've been talking about, the cylinder, the words "God forgives," the two muzzles, and the shell casing?
Yes.
All right. And asking you to take a look at the second photograph. You recognize what's shown in that photograph?
Yes.
And what's shown in that photograph?
Muzzle of a handgun and a spent shell casing.
And the muzzle that's shown in the second photograph is a different muzzle from the one we were just talking about? On a different part of the body?
Yes.
Okay. And are both of those pictures fair and accurate representations of your work on Mr. Hernandez's right arm?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd offer those as the next two exhibits.
6 and 7.
Showing you exhibit number 6. Mr. Nelson, the second muzzle, the one that we're now talking about, and the shell casing, are the two arrows pointing to those two items?
Yes.
Now, in addition, do you see what I've traced with that third line?
Yes.
And what is that?
Smoke.
All right. Now, when was that part of the request having to do with the second muzzle?
Yes.
Okay. And who did that request come from?
Mr. Hernandez.
Was that something that you decided to put in on your own, or was that done at Mr. Hernandez's specific request?
A specific request by the client.
Showing you now what's been marked as exhibit number 7 for purposes of this hearing. Is it fair to say that that's simply a closer-up view of the shell casing and the muzzle?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the muzzle, how did Mr. Hernandez communicate to you that that's the image he wanted?
Verbally.
Verbally? All right, and was it with reference to the other muzzle, or how did he verbalize that?
He said he wanted it there.
Okay. That was the location you wanted it?
Yep.
How about the image itself? Did you do the same thing with the computer?
I believe so.
All right. What about the shell casing?
I'm pretty sure that was drawn on him.
That was drawn on?
I believe so.
And what do you mean by that?
Instead of using a stencil, you manually draw it with ink onto the skin before you tattoo it.
Okay. And
With regard to the muzzle, was that by stencil or was that freehand as well?
I believe the muzzles were both stencils.
Was it the same stencil for both muzzles or
believe so.
different stencils?
I believe it was the same. I don't know if we modified the size of it, but I think it's the same image.
And did you have the ability to modify the size of the stencil with the equipment you had in your shop?
Yes.
And what did that entail? Basically a zooming in or zooming out?
That's right.
Now, the freehand drawing that you said you might have done with the shell casing, you said that was initially, you believe that was initially drawn on first?
Yes.
And who would have done that?
Myself.
And the purpose of drawing it on first would be what?
Most of the time it's because we couldn't find a good enough image online. Have
Right.
to produce our own image.
And when you produce the own image, you draw it on for what purpose? To check with the client?
That, and also it provides design for me to go on.
Okay. Now, when you got finished with the muzzle, the shell casing, and the smoke coming from the muzzle, did Mr. Hernandez express to you any dissatisfaction with the work that you did with respect to those three things?
He did not.
Mr. Nelson, I think you answered this, but I may have been mistaken. The shell casing that we see here in exhibit number 2, was that asked for by Mr. Hernandez, or did you put that in yourself?
It was asked for.
Showing you the 2 photographs I've just handed to you now, do you recognize what's shown in those pictures?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that both of those pictures show the words "God forgives" that you provided at that sitting for Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Okay. And one's just a closer view and one's a further away view, is that fair?
Yes.
And do those pictures both fairly and accurately show the work that you did for Mr. Hernandez at that sitting?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd offer those as the next 2 exhibits.
Objection.
Exhibits 8 and 9.
And just so we can orient ourselves, Mr. Nelson, showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 2. That's the part of the arm that it was on?
Yes.
So the inside forearm, for the record. Showing you exhibit number 8. Is that a closer up view of the words "God forgives"?
Yes.
Now, the words were chosen by whom?
Mr. Hernandez.
The fact that the words were to be written backwards was requested by whom?
Mr. Hernandez.
What about the font? Do you know how that decision was reached?
No, I don't remember that.
Now, Mr. Nelson, when one receives a tattoo, is there bleeding that's generally associated with the receipt of a tattoo?
Yes.
All right. And based on your experience, how long does that bleeding typically last?
Only for 1 day.
Okay. And does it depend at all on the intensity of the tattoo, that is the coloring or the outlines?
Generally, the bigger and the more trauma to the skin, it'll bleed a little bit longer, but never more than a day.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 8. Do you recognize almost in the middle of this photograph, on the upward stem of the D, a reddish color?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness is not an expert witness. I think he's going down the road of asking him to testify as to expert matters.
Well, he's asking him right now if he recognizes a red mark. And that may be answered.
Yes.
And what do you recognize that red mark to be?
Objection.
Sustained in that form.
What does it appear to you to be?
A little bit of blood.
Now, based upon your experience, strike that. How many tattoos would you say you've given during the time of your tattooing career?
Thousands, I have no idea.
And do you have tattoos yourself?
Yes.
All right. And how many, where are your tattoos?
My right arm, both of my calves, my back, my left wrist.
And based upon your experience both giving tattoos as well as receiving tattoos, can you estimate when this tattoo, based on what you see inside the circle, may have been given?
Objection,
In
Your Honor. Calls for expert testimony. He's not qualified as an expert. Has not been qualified.
Finish the question.
Can you estimate how old that tattoo is that's shown in Exhibit Number 8 based upon your viewing of what you believe to be blood on the upward stem of the D?
How old the tattoo is, or the age of the tattoo in relation to the photo?
The age of that tattoo in relation to the photo.
A couple of days at the most.
Objection, move to strike.
No, overruled.
And Mr. Nelson, when you strike that, at some point in 2014, were you spoken to by some detectives from the Boston Police Department?
Yes.
All right. And you again spoke to them in 2015 as well, is that correct?
Yes.
You remember making 2 taped statements?
Correct.
All right. When you were first spoken to, when you were spoken to for the first time in 2014, do you remember being asked questions about this particular tattoo, God Forgives?
I don't remember.
Is there something that I could show you that might help you with your memory?
Yes.
May I inquire from here briefly?
Yes, and quickly.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at lines 9 and 10 and read that to yourself. And after having read that, does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
What did you say to the police when you were shown the God Forgives tattoo?
I said I don't think I did that.
And did something cause you to remember that you had done it?
Yes.
And what was that?
The picture.
They showed you a picture of it?
Yes.
Now, this second sitting, strike that. This sitting that you described, where all these tattoos took place, everything but the words on his chest. Do you remember when that was?
I believe it was in 2013.
Okay. And do you remember when in 2013 it was? Not the specific date, but a little bit more specifically than just 2013.
I think March of 2013.
Just two questions to clarify. Mr. Nelson, going back to the muzzle near the inside of the elbow, shown here on exhibit number 2.
Mr. Lee, put the question. I have jurors coming in 15 minutes.
The smoke that is coming out of the muzzle in exhibit number 2, or the muzzle up higher up on his arm, was that a decision that was made by Mr. Hernandez to have that depicted?
Yes.
And lastly, before you actually start to ink an individual, what do you do to make sure that you guys are on the same page?
I just have them look at it.
When you say look at it, what are they looking at?
The stencil or the
stencil.
drawing.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. I have nothing further, Your Honor. I would just ask the 2 tape statements that Mr. Nelson made be marked for the hearing, as the exhibit for the hearing.
Any objection?
No objections.
Exhibit 9. All right, any questions, Mr. Leontier?
At least 50 minutes worth, Your Honor. Mr. Nelson, you swore to tell the truth today, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you know what perjury is?
Yes.
Did many of the responses that you made today in this courtroom, did you give those responses to the police when they interviewed you in California in 2014 and in 2016?
Objection.
To the best of my recollection.
Could you answer the question, please?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
Are you aware that many of your answers today are not contained within the interviews that you were involved with the police?
Objection. Sustained in that form.
Second. Now, do you remember having an interview on September 23rd of 2014?
Yes.
And do you remember who was present?
No.
Do you remember Detective Sullivan being present?
Yes.
Do you remember Detective McIsaac being present?
Yes.
Do you remember Detective Monroe being present?
No.
Did they talk to you before you officially went on to have the interview tape?
No.
They didn't tell you anything about why they were there, they just walked in and said, we want to interview you.
They said what they were there for.
And what did they tell you?
They asked me if I tattooed Aaron Hernandez. I said yes, and they wanted to interview me about it. Tattoos I did on.
Jake? Do you remember being asked whether or not you tattooed him with a cylinder?
No. I tattooed a cylinder on him.
Do you remember them showing you a picture of a cylinder?
Yes.
tattoo?
They had pictures of all the tattoos I've done on him.
And did they ask you, in reference to that picture, whether or not you tattooed him with the cylinder?
Yes. Tattooed.
And did they ask you what he asked you with respect to the cylinder?
Now, if you recall that question, you may answer.
The question that the detectives asked me?
Yeah. What did he ask you to tattoo on his arm? Do you remember that question?
A cylinder of a revolver, yes.
And you answered part of the revolver that holds bullets?
That's right.
Margaret, just get a page and say.
Page 4, 15. Do you remember the question? Did he specifically ask you for like a cylinder, a revolver cylinder tattoo? Do you
Yes.
remember that question?
Yes.
And you answered what?
Yes.
And they asked this question. And when you were tattooing this, did he ask you for any type of amount of bullets in the tattoo? It seems like there's one empty. Did he ask you for that? Answer.
Yes, I believe.
What did he ask you for details? Do you remember that question?
No.
You don't remember that question. So you don't remember the answer to that question.
No.
May I approach the witness?
Why don't you leave that?
I'm
with
going to,
me?
Judge. Show you line 25, and then you can go on to the next page and I'll ask you a question. Line 25, question. What did he ask you for details? Answer. Go to the next page. What was your answer?
Just to make one empty?
Just to make one empty, correct?
Correct.
Question. He asked you for one empty. Answer. What was your answer?
Yeah.
He asked you for a 6-cylinder? Answer. I don't know if that mattered, or if he was specific about that. Wasn't that your answer?
Yes.
And your answer today when asked that question was that he told you, after looking at a computer, did you mention looking at a computer here anywhere with respect to the cylinder?
Yes.
Where?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
When you were interviewed in 2014 and asked questions about the cylinder and the details and what Mr. Hernandez told you, did you report anywhere in this interview that Mr. Hernandez told you he wanted a cylinder with six chamber capacity?
No.
He didn't ask you for that, did he?
No.
Did you tell the police when you were asked that you and Mr. Hernandez looked at the computer and selected a cylinder? Is that anywhere in your testimony here?
Well, wait a minute. In your testimony here,
That's right, that
yes,
in the
he
interview.
has testified to that.
In the interview in 2014.
Which,
There's only-
2014?
Yes, there's only one interview, Your Honor. It's on
Yes,
September
very good,
23rd.
September 23.
Yeah.
Your Honor, just if I can be heard, on line 19, there is Mr. Nelson's specific response to that question. Do you recognize that photo? I'm sorry. There is a portion of the transcript that leaves out a response that Mr. Nelson made, that they looked at the computer for images of a cylinder.
You mean the transcript is incomplete?
The transcript is incomplete with respect to that, and that's why I asked that the audio interviews be put in so the court could hear Mr. Nelson's response to that question, but it does not appear on the transcript.
What line are you at, sir? Could you tell me what line in the transcript you said is missing?
It's not on the transcript, so it won't be on a line, Mr. Leontier.
Was it the question's not on the transcript either?
Now, the question is on the transcript. If you give me 1 minute, I can find the line and the page. Page 4, line 17, question, okay. Did he specifically ask you for, like, a cylinder, a revolver cylinder tattoo? Line 19, answer, yeah. And then there's an ellipsis. On the tape, it says, we looked it up on the computer. It does not appear on the transcript. It is on the tape.
All right. With regard to the tape, was that provided in discovery?
Yes.
Mr. Leontier, have you reviewed the tape?
I've listened to it, Your Honor. I don't remember hearing that. Now, obviously, the transcriber didn't hear it either because they didn't note it. But if he says it's on there, that's on there. What can I tell you? I have not heard that specifically. Okay, let's go back now. Let's go back to line 20, to be clear. So we're now told that your answer was, yeah, we looked it up on the computer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you tell the investigators that Mr. Hernandez told you which cylinder to use after looking it up on the computer?
I don't recall that.
Well, why don't you take a look right there? It's right there, the question. Do you see anywhere where you say Mr. Hernandez picked the cylinder off the computer? Is it
Yes.
fair to say it's not there?
What's not there?
That Mr. Hernandez told you which cylinder to imprint on him after looking at the computer? Is it?
No.
It's not here?
No.
Okay. And in fact, you told the police at page 5, line 4, he asked you for the question. He asked you for a 6-shot cylinder? Answer: I don't know if that mattered, or if he was specific about that. You didn't remember in 2014 whether he told you that he wanted a 6-shot cylinder, correct?
Correct.
But today, almost 3 years later, you do remember.
Pictures will refresh my memory.
You saw pictures back then as well too, sir. They showed you pictures 1 and 2 at the interview of that tattoo with the cylinder.
Is that a question or is that a statement?
Did they?
That's true.
I asked you a question, sir. Did they not show you a picture?
Yes, they did.
They did. And they showed you that cylinder.
Yes.
And that cylinder showed a 6, what do we call it? 6 slots for the bullets, correct?
That's true.
And when you were shown that then and asked the question whether Mr. Hernandez told you to do a 6-shot cylinder, which is what your testimony was today, you answered, I don't know if that mattered, or if he was specific about that. Correct?
Correct.
Was your memory better in 2014, or was your memory better today?
It's about the same.
But the testimony's different, is it not?
He chose that one. I don't remember if he specifically said at that time that he wanted a 6-shot.
You don't remember?
No.
You don't remember today whether he asked you for a 6-shot?
No.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Do you remember being asked in 2014, page 5, line 9, did you tattoo this God Forgives up here as well? Do you remember being asked that question in 2014?
Yes.
And what did you answer? Line 10.
I don't think I did that.
And the next question was, he returned to the cylinder, the questionnaire, did he not? Okay, but you definitely did the cylinder, yeah. Right?
Yes.
And when the question is, did you tattoo this God Forgives up here as well? He was showing you a picture of God Forgives tattoo, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then on December 23rd of 2016, that day in California again, showing up at your home, you had Detective Sullivan, Detective Cummings, Detective McIsaac, Quinn Fenton, LA County District Attorney Office, serving you with a subpoena to come to Massachusetts, correct?
Correct.
Did you find that a little intimidating? All those police showing up at your house?
Objection. Overruled.
No.
You get 4 police officers show up at your house on a regular basis?
No.
go to page 2. Was that a fairly short interview? Sir?
Yes, the second interview was pretty short.
And what did they basically want to know at that second interview, if you recall?
In regards to the tattoos, the God forgives.
That was the sum and substance of that interview, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Okay. And so they asked you a question. Hold on, let me get you that transcript. Get my patient, Your Honor, because I'm doing my best to move.
Yeah, there's no jury here, so let's just get to the heart of foundational issues.
Okay, page 2, line 16. Question. Okay, we just have a couple of follow-up questions for you. There's an additional photograph of a tattoo I want you to take a look at. During your initial interview, you mentioned it. Sir, did you mention this tattoo, or did the police mention this tattoo to you in the initial interview?
I don't recall.
Well, let's go back and look at the question. Let's go back to page 5 of the September 23rd, 2014, line 9. Question. Did you tattoo this God forgives up here as well? Did you ask that question, or was it the detective asking you that question?
The detective asked me that question.
You didn't suggest anywhere in here about the God forgives tattoo, did you?
No.
They asked you.
Yes.
Okay. And then in 2016, and the question goes on again in 2016, page 2, line 19. You weren't sure if you had given that to Aaron Hernandez. Does that record, transcript's incomplete, do you recognize that tattoo? Now, when you were asked in 2014, you said, I don't think I did that. You didn't say you weren't sure if you had given that tattoo to Aaron Hernandez, did you?
No.
You said, I don't think I did that.
That's correct.
And now, 2 years later, in December of this year, 2016, you say, in response, does that, again, missing word, record, do you recognize that tattoo? And you say, yes. Correct?
Correct.
So your testimony in 2016 and your testimony today in court about this tattoo is completely different than your testimony in 2014. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you changed your testimony.
Well, counsel, no, he didn't testify in
Strike that.
2014.
I apologize, Your Honor. With respect to the statement you gave the police in 2014, it's different, correct?
Correct.
Did you want to tell the police what you knew truthfully in 2014?
Yes. I
Did you try to testify to it? Did you try to give an interview truthfully?
I did.
How many times have you talked to the investigators since 2014 till this interview in December of 2016?
0.
Pardon me?
Between the two interviews?
Yes.
None.
So when they showed up to your house in December of 2016, you had had no communication with anyone, the district attorney's office, the police, or anyone else about these tattoos.
That's right.
And when they showed up in 2016, before this interview happened, did they give you any explanation why they were there?
Yes.
What was the explanation?
To interview me about the tattoos
What tattoo?
that I did on Aaron Hernandez.
Which, a specific tattoo?
The second interview?
Yes, sir.
Yes, God forgives.
So they told you before this interview was taped that they wanted to interview you about the God forgives tattoo.
They came to serve me a subpoena. Then they told my wife to leave the room, and then they asked me the question about God forgives.
And that question was before you went through these questions.
What do you mean?
Before you had the taped interview about the God forgives, did they explain that they were there that day to ask you essentially one question about the God Forgives tattoo?
No.
So you, before that tape recorder went on, you had no idea what question they wanted to ask you?
Correct.
Sir, when you testified, strike that, when you were interviewed in 2014 and 2015, did you ever say Aaron Hernandez wanted...
Mr. Leontier, I don't think we have a 2015 interview.
2014 or 2016? Thank you.
16, thank you.
Did you ever mention in either of those interviews that Aaron Hernandez wanted a semi-automatic muzzle of a gun?
I don't remember.
Well, I guess we're going to have to look then. Look at page 5 on the 2014 interview. Line 22, question. Let me know when you're ready. You ready?
Yeah.
Page 5, line 22. Question. Okay, I'm going to make this number 2. When you when you put this tattoo on him, what did he ask for? A tattoo? Answer. The muzzle of a gun. Question. Did he ask what type of gun? Or did he ask you what type of gun to tattoo him with? Answer. No, we just looked up pictures on the computer and picked it. Question. Okay, and did you tattoo him with this, that's the shell casing. Did you ever mention in your interview in 2014 that Aaron Hernandez requested the muzzle of a semi-automatic pistol?
No.
The first time you ever mentioned that was in this courtroom today, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's go to page 6. Same. Line 13. Question. Did he say like he wanted a 9mm or a 40 caliber or a semi-automatic? Answer. I think I just drew that on him. Is that what your statement was? I think I just drew that on him.
Yes.
And when you were asked, did he looked at images on a computer? Your answer is unknown here, but then the next question is no? Answer, no. I drew that on him. Question, you drew that on him? Okay, so this is an image number 2. Could you also sign and date it? Now, again, in the question on line 13, you were asked if he wanted a semi-automatic. Correct?
Correct.
And your answer was no. Unequivocally. It wasn't I don't remember, I'm not sure, I think so. It was no. Correct?
Correct.
What line are we on?
13, 14, 15, 16.
No does not appear anywhere on those lines.
I can't. What?
Say it again.
The word no does not appear on any one of those lines.
Excuse me, line 20?
You said 14, 15, 16.
All right, anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. Page 7. Question 6. Wait, one question. With respect to the second...
Mr. Leontier,
Yeah.
if all you intend to do is establish the inconsistencies, I have the transcripts as part of the pleadings, and I have the recording before me, so it seems that all of that evidence is before the court.
You want to so far to give him 15 minutes. by the court.
Well, no, so far you've been going 23 minutes.
I think I have the
But
right...
if that's what we are doing, if you are looking to establish, to demonstrate inconsistencies, that's in the record evidence that is before me now. Is there another purpose to the inquiry?
Yes, to show that this witness is lying and has changed his testimony from interviews on two occasions.
I suppose you can argue that.
I am arguing that. And
Well,
I'm
no,
trying to
you're
bring out...
questioning the witness, sir. But do you intend to establish anything that is not already part of the record before me?
Yes.
All right, please do.
Your Honor, I've asked yesterday that I be allowed to inquire of Detective Sullivan. Am I going to be allowed to inquire with him?
Do you have any further questions for this witness, sir?
Well, it depends whether I have another witness to inquire of. Otherwise, I have to get everything through this witness.
All right, let's get it done.
Does that mean I can do Sullivan?
No, that doesn't mean
Well,
that.
then I have other areas of inquiry.
Let's get it done.
I'm going to go to page 7, 13. Question. Okay, any idea, did he give you any explanation why he wanted these firearm tattoos on his arm? That's not conversation about that. Answer. No, he didn't talk much at all. He just had his headphones. Correct?
Correct.
Now, sir, you've testified that you've given thousands of tattoos, correct?
Correct.
Have you given tattoos of barrels of a gun on other individuals?
Yes.
Matter of fact, it's a fairly common tattoo, isn't it?
Somewhat.
Approach.
You may.
So. I'd like to mark for identification a number of tattoos involving revolver barrels. These are not tattoos, I will say, that this particular witness has used, but I'm showing that it is a fairly common as he's testifying to.
I'd object Mr. Nelson answered that.
I can't hear it's in my ear.
Mr. Nelson did answer the question that
In his experience, it was fairly commonplace. None of those tattoos, I asked Mr. Leontire whether that was any of Mr. Nelson's work, and Mr. Nelson said that that was not his work. So I'm not sure what the relevance is given Mr.
Well,
Nelson.
Mr. Nelson has not identified these as his work or not being his work. Mr. Leontire is saying they're not his work. Is that right?
Correct.
And you're offering these to show what?
Well, Your Honor, he said that he went on the internet, looked at barrels.
Yeah.
These are all on the internet. I have the contact sheet from the internet where they show up.
Well, let's see if they're what he was looking at.
Sir, I'm showing you a number of images from the internet relative to barrel of a gun. Were those the kind of images you were looking at when you were looking to select one for Mr. Hernandez?
No.
What kind were you looking at?
This one would be more accurate. Pictures of real ones, not pictures with tattoos already done of them.
What do you mean by real ones?
Pictures of actual parts. These are pictures of tattoos
Already on.
already done, yes.
In your experience, have you seen tattoos like those on individuals receiving tattoos?
Yeah.
What was your answer?
Objection.
No, overruled.
What was the question?
Have you seen tattoos similar to the ones I've just shown you on individuals that you've tattooed?
Like these? Yes.
I'd like to offer these into evidence, Your Honor.
Let's receive them as a grouping if we can,
Sure.
just so we don't get it confused. We're now at Exhibit 11, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So let's receive these collectively, Exhibit 11, and Mr. Sheehan, if you have a stapler. Anything further?
I do. Mr. Nelson, are you aware whether or not revolvers come in different size barrels?
Yes.
Correct? Yes?
Yes.
So, for example, let me just show this. For example, this is a piece of a catalog from Smith & Wesson. Have you ever heard of Smith & Wesson before the gun?
Yes.
Okay. Could you identify for me what the capacity of these guns are?
Objection.
Is sustained.
Are you aware that there are some guns that have a 5-bullet capacity?
Yes.
Objection.
No, overruled if you know that to be the case.
Are you aware that there are some guns that have an 8-bullet capacity?
Objection.
No.
Are you aware that some guns have a 7-bullet capacity?
Objection.
No, overruled.
No, I didn't know that.
So the only thing you know is that there are some with 5 and some with 6?
Uh-huh.
So you're not
Is that
aware?
yes?
Yes.
Is that yes?
Sorry.
Sorry. So you're not aware of a 10-bullet capacity gun?
No.
And you're not aware of a 7
No.
or an 8?
No.
With respect to guns, tattoos, in your experience, have a lot of people received gun tattoos from you specifically?
No.
You've never done a gun tattoo?
No, not many.
Have you done gun tattoos?
Yes.
Did you create a internet link for your new company?
Yes.
Twitter?
No.
Instagram?
Yes.
And this is try your company's Instagram.
Is there a question?
I'm getting there.
Let's get it done.
Do you recognize this tattoo?
Yes.
Did you do this tattoo?
Yes.
And when did you do this tattoo?
Probably about 5 years ago or more.
And what is it a tattoo of?
A revolver.
Mark this as an exhibit and introduce it.
Exhibit 12?
Exhibit 12.
I'm showing you another picture from your Instagram account. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Did you do this tattoo?
Yes.
And what is it a tattoo of?
AK-47.
And did you put this AK-47 on?
Yes.
Counsel, what is the relevance of that?
I'm going to get there. With
No,
respect to the
get there
muzzle.
now. What is the relevance of an AK-47 tattoo?
People get, lots of people get gun tattoos.
He's already testified to that.
Okay? I don't believe you said lots. Was your testimony that,
It is common.
is it common that people get gun tattoos?
Yes.
With respect to the muzzle of the gun that you inked, did Mr. Hernandez ask you for any specific muzzle?
No.
He didn't ask you for a 40 milligram gun?
Nope.
He didn't ask you for a 9 millimeter?
No.
He didn't ask you for any particular kind of muzzle?
No, he just picked the image off the internet.
He picked what?
He pointed to an image on the internet that he left.
Okay. And that didn't depict any particular model of a gun? Caliber?
I don't know.
Do you remember?
I don't know what a caliber is by an image of the muzzle of a gun.
Right. You can't tell by looking at a muzzle
No.
what caliber gun it is.
Correct.
Okay. Finally, in your prior interviews with the police, did you ever mention that you did 2 muzzles of guns?
I don't remember.
Well, take a look at your testimony. Strike that. Take a look at your interviews. Let me ask this question so we don't waste any more time in the court. Do you remember providing information to the police that you tattooed 2 muzzles of a gun?
No.
One final question. With respect to smoke from a shell casing, have you seen shell casings depicted before as tattoos?
Not personally, no.
Have you seen them on the internet?
No.
So you don't know whether it's common or not when a shell casing is used as a tattoo to have a whiff of smoke?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. You may step in and watch your step, please.
Aaron, just one last thing before the close of the evidence, that's where we reached. I'd ask that the court make part of the record the extraction report of Mr. Hernandez's phone, specifically with respect to exhibits number 8 and 9, which were the photographs of the God Forgives tattoo. They are in the extraction report as having been captured on April 2nd, 2013, which is relevant to Mr. Nelson's testimony regarding...
I'm sorry, what do the phone records say?
That the image in exhibit number 8 and 9, numbers 8 and 9, specifically number 9, was captured on Mr. Hernandez's phone April 2nd, 2013.
What do you mean it was captured there?
Meaning that's when the image was taken on the phone. There was testimony...
There's an image on a phone? What are you talking about?
Mr. Hernandez photographed the God Forgives tattoo on his phone April 2nd, 2013. It's relevant to the time when the tattoo was obtained because Mr. Nelson testified that the photograph was roughly 1 to 3 days old, if I'm not mistaken, 2 days old, based upon his examination.
So you're representing that the photographs were retrieved from the defendant's telephone, is that right?
Exhibit 9, yes.
And that you can demonstrate the date that that photo was taken to be April
2nd, 2013, based on an extraction of Mr. Hernandez's cell phone. Forensic extraction.
All right. Mr. Leontier, as to that representation of the phone data.
No objection, no.
All right. Without objection, that's received.
Exhibit 13.
All right. Commonwealth, were you intending to submit any further evidence?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Leontier, let me hear you as to Detective Sullivan. Give me a proffer as to what you would establish through him.
Number one, Your Honor, I'd like to know theory and the circumstances under which they are suggesting that the barrel, cylinder, the God Forgives, these other tattoos have, to this case, with respect to foundation. For example, simple question I ask, and I will argue this if I don't need Mr. Sullivan, but...
Well, no, stick with my focus, if you would. What is it that you would establish through Detective Sullivan if he were permitted to testify?
I believe we can establish what the purpose of introducing, what the purpose is of introducing these tattoos.
Well, the Commonwealth is articulating its purpose.
Well, I think that's...
What is it that the sergeant would add or detract from that?
There is a question, for example, as to what God forgives from a foundational point of view is intended to imply. We are entitled...
So you're asking that Detective Sullivan opine as to the meaning of that phrase?
With respect to the introduction of this evidence, yes. Because I think it's relevant to the foundation.
Are you asking simply for his opinion?
With respect to this case, I'm asking what...
With respect to the tattoo
Yes,
issue?
sir, I am.
All right. And how is his opinion admissible or relevant?
Because the question is whether or not what is being suggested is a probability or a mere possibility. And that's what I want to establish on
Okay. On that basis, I don't see that he would offer relevant testimony, or you would seek to elicit relevant testimony. All right. Let us suspend this hearing. We have jurors waiting. Let's get them lined up. Do we have Detective Camper?
Your Honor, I believe we do, Your Honor. So I
Okay.
can just check in the hallway for him.
Your Honor, is it possible just for us to give a quick summation of why we need to say?
Not right now. I will hear that maybe later this afternoon. I want to get the jurors with us. I'm sorry? Yeah, we'll take 5 minutes to line up our jurors.